G'day viewers, it's Michael here again for SingleRacer. Welcome back. Now, I don't think it's any secret to most of you that one of my favourite channels on YouTube is Mike Smith over at Sim Racing 604. And a while ago when Project Cars 2 first came out, he did this excellent video on, it was 7 of his favourite cars and a few duds. Now, I'll have a link to that video in the description. But near the end of the video, he asked for his subscribers to suggest a few cars that they thought were really good. Now, I commented under his video that rather than give one or two, I'd like to take the time to go through every car, which I wanted to do anyway, but whether he would mind if I kind of copied his video and did my own handful of favourite cars. And he thought that seemed like a great idea. I assume, being the keen sim racing driver, that he'd want to know other people's thoughts about what cars were good. So here is that video now, and that's what I'm hoping to do. And so one thing that I felt was important in this video was that I needed to re-watch his video and make sure there was no overlap. Now that turned out to be quite easy because I tend to probably like different cars than Mike does generally, so there wasn't that much of an overlap anyway, so that turned out to be a good thing. And one of the things I'll say is I hope to feature 7 cars that I really like, but you can see here the Ford Falcon FG is definitely a preferred car but won't be included in those 7. The other 2 honourable mentions I want to make is all the Lotuses. If you've ever seen the banner for my channel, I have a picture of the Lotus 49 at Nordschleifer, and the Lotus 49 is my favourite car ever, in any game ever. It's just a fantastic car to drive. So all the Lotuses as a group are my favourites. There's only a couple that are not so good, but generally all the Lotuses, and one under the banner called SMS, which tend to be all the Formula cars. So there's a Formula C, Formula X, etc. They all tend to be really good as well, so I won't include them in this group, but those 2 groups alone are terrific on their own. And so just before we go racing in each individual car, I just wanted to cover off, because being the anal person that I am, I tend to do these stupid things like create lists for every car in the game, which I also did for Assetto Corsa. But just an example here, here's my Excel spreadsheet where I basically used the hashtag symbol for my preferred cars here, and this allows me just to have a quick glimpse as a reminder of what cars I prefer. And especially in Assetto Corsa, the Nordschleifer being arguably harder than most other tracks, I just use this P symbol here to confirm that they're the cars that I prefer for the Nordschleifer track. And just in reference to this video, I used a W to say these are the dud cars, just to give me a quick reference for this video. But just as an example for the overall score, as of the version 2 patch for Project Cars 2, there are, as I count them, 187 cars in the game, and I preferred 61 of those, which might not sound a lot, so that's basically 1/3, but I actually found it surprisingly high, especially to Assetto Corsa. In Assetto Corsa, I drive regularly sort of 6 cars, but I might have a dozen that I drive all the time. So to have 61 cars that I liked, and 18 of them are my preferred cars for the Nordschleifer, that's surprisingly high to me. And I'm glad to say that there were only 7 duds, but out of those 7, they actually included the rallycross cars when I drove them on a road track. Now, I haven't done a rallycross race yet, so there actually might not be duds, that just might suit that particular course. So there might only be 3 or 4 duds out of the whole game, and I'll feature 3 in this video, so I think that's actually an excellent score overall. and I'm very happy with Project Cars 2 in general. So let's move on to the cars now. And now my first preferred car is called the Formula Renault 3.5. Now it's pretty basic, a standard sort of performance open wheel car. Great sound, great cockpit in my opinion, and very easy to drive, very neutral, beautiful car. So there's not that much to say about it, so I'll keep quiet and let's have a bit of a listen to it. And now my second preferred car is in the same vein. It's known as the ORECA 03 Nissan, but this is much more of a brute of a car. Now I tend to like these more difficult cars to drive. They just seem to push my buttons a bit more, but unfortunately it probably is not going to suit a lot of people that are just beginning to learn the game. These are probably all very difficult cars to drive. And one thing that I've noticed is, and this could just be me because I'm not an oval racing driver, but I find it seems to be a little faster if you come up from the high bank and take the corner quite late. I used to come in very low very early, and for some reason I just find it faster, even though you're further away from the edge of the inner track, to come out wide and then hit the track and come down narrow. I just find it seems to be faster. I haven't worked out if it's been faster being close to the wall or in the inner circle the whole time. I'm still trying to work that out, but if anyone has a suggestion, I'll be more than happy to hear a comment about it. And now the next one on the list is called the Mercedes-Benz SAUBER C9LM, big mouthful. Now this is another brute of a car, and this is a common thread I think. I tend to like cars that are on the edge, but at the same time they are very easy to handle, but from that on the edge point of view. In other words, they're kind of neutral. They're like 50-50 or 40-60 handling. I don't tend to like the twitchier cars where the arse end wants to spin out behind me, but this is very enjoyable to drive, but you really have to control it. And please forgive the handling of these tracks. I did most of my testing on all the cars on Bathurst simply because that was a track that had a lot of elevation, a lot of corners, but I knew it so well. So I haven't had a chance to drive any of the other tracks. So although I picked tracks that I know where the track goes, I still don't know the apexes and all that because I haven't learnt the Project Cars 2 version of the track. So I'm a bit all over the place in all these tracks, so forgive me for that, but this is a very enjoyable car to drive. So let's have a listen. And now the fourth car in the list is called the BMW V12 LMR. Now this is a strange car in a way because it's almost like the modern version of the hybrids. It has a modern take to it, but it feels very old school as well. It feels a lot like, to me, the Lotuses, and you can see here from the cockpit it has a very old kind of feel to it. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's just like a mixture of the two cars together, and I think that's why I like it so much. So let's have a listen to this one. And now the fifth car in the list has the potential to cause some arguments, because I've noticed in YouTube videos that, which is a natural thing, and I tend to agree, is that most people prefer what you might call the standard Caterham. Now I like the Caterham, but I prefer its big brother here, the Caterham SP 300R. And it is just a beautiful car to drive. It is getting closer to the old school Lotus type feel, very on the edge from the point of view of almost like road tyres, that kind of feel, very natural road handling, and extremely enjoyable to drive. But again, another car that's a little on the edge. If you relax for a second, you start to run off the track. So very enjoyable. Let's have a listen. And so now we come to my two favourite cars of the game. They both have equal scores as far as the highest scores of any cars, and they are both brutes and quite savage to handle. And I am a bit surprised that the only real, arguably what you would call street car that came close in the scoring was the Ferrari Enzo, but it didn't quite make this list. But unlike Assetto Corsa, where there's a lot of street cars that I enjoy, for some reason I seem to prefer the handling of the more the sports-like cars in Project Cars 2. So this one is called the Audi R8 LMP 900, and like I said, it's just a brute of a car. Great sound, great sense of speed. Just a complete handful, and I apologise that these last two are so brutish if you are looking for cars that you could add to your list, but that's the way I seem to like them. And let's have a listen to this one. And so now we have my favourite car of the game, and I don't want to talk too much about this one other than to tell you that it's called the Ferrari 333 SP. But what a sound, what an awesome car to drive. I just want to keep quiet, let you listen to the sound and just take it all in. This is my favourite car of the game. Let's have a listen. And so now we move on to the three duds of the game, but when I say that, I agree with Mike Smith. It's not about being nasty. These were just the three cars that I picked as the most disappointing, but not in a bad way. Mike Smith talked about how his favourite car was the Lamborghini Sesto Elemento, but it was so disappointing once he drove it. So for me, that equivalent version of that car was the Aston Martin VULCAN. Such a modern, advanced looking car, but when I drove it, as you can see here in the video, it was so hard to handle, slid all over the place. Again, that could be my old wheel. In the hands of someone with a direct drive wheel, this could be a really good car, so I don't want to dish on it too much. But I also just was so disappointed in the sound. It sounds like a really bad vacuum cleaner to me, so everything about this car I really just didn't enjoy driving. And as you can see here by the video, I just wanted to be over and done with, and I picked the shortest track I could think of that I knew, just to get it over. So let's move on to the next one. And so now we have another example of why I don't want to crap too much on any of these particular cars, because this was a personal thing where I just don't like cars that have a tendency to heavily understeer, and this was one of them, the BMW 2002 STANCEWORKS edition. Sorry, that's another mouthful, but I just find it awful to drive from the point of view that you have to really push the front end into the corners. It just doesn't want to turn. But again, this could be my old wheel. Now an example of that is I ran it on Bathurst just because I was running out of tracks that I was familiar with. So I noticed that when I loaded it though, it has a very good time, so well under the 2-minute mark. I think it was about 1:53 or something like that. So clearly in the hands of a better driver, it can be handled the correct way. And in the Assetto Corsa, I struggle with the Ferrari 599, I think it's called, but it always tops the Nordschleife list. So that's just personal choice, and that's maybe my a reflection of my inability to drive those types of cars and the wheel that I use, so rather than the car itself. So let's move on to the last one. And so the final car in the list I want to use as an example of taking a negative where I'm picking these three cars but turning it into a positive, hopefully. And that's because this car, the Ford F50 RTR, was a car that when I drove it on Bathurst, because I mentioned that I drove all the cars on Bathurst just to make it easier deciding how they would handle, and it's a great example that when I took it here to an open road course, your typical street road course. I had so much fun with this. Now, I don't think it's a great car, but it was a lot of fun. So I think what happens is, in a lot of cases, it can often just be the car matched with the correct track. And a great example of this is that I gave slightly lower scores to all the rallycross cars, but that was because I didn't drive them on a rallycross track. So as soon as I do that, I have always adjusted the car scores based on matching it better with a suitable track. So I think that's how I'll leave it here, is that this can, in the hands of someone like Alex who has a direct drive wheel, I think Alex over at the Extra Mile could get so much fun out of this, because he could do the drifting that I can't do. I'm not a very good drifter, and he could really push a lot of fun out of this car. So what I'll do is I'll leave you with the ocean view here, and I just want to leave on a positive note that I really enjoyed a lot of these cars, and even the negative cars have their place because someone else will enjoy them. So enjoy the view. I'll catch you next time, and take it easy. Okay, see ya.